CrowdStrike stops breaches. These days, critical work isn't done from the protection of a corporate network. It happens at cafes, back offices, and at home. New ways of working mean new attacks. New attacks require new defenses. CrowdStrike stops breaches so you can do what you do best. CrowdStrike, we stop so you can go. CrowdStrike is offering Security Weekly listeners 15 days free access to its platform. See how it works at securityweekly.com/CrowdStrike. Can we continue to function without facts? Cybercriminals exploit the absence of facts, harming organizations through the easiest point of entry, email. No company should claim they can stop all phishing attacks. It's about having all the facts in seconds and reducing the time it takes to respond. It's minutes versus hours in the difference between a security incident and a breach. Great Horn. See through the dark. To learn more, go to securityweekly.com/Great Horn. Data protection is a top priority with today's work-from-home workforce. However, current data loss prevention tools inadequately protect data in cloud or SaaS offerings from insider threats. Secure Circle automatically protects data as it leaves SaaS services such as GitHub, AWS, and Salesforce. The protection is transparent to users and works with any application to persistently protect data, even source code. Secure your data with Secure Circle's Zero Trust Data Protection. Begin your 30-day free trial by visiting securityweekly.com/Secure Circle. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. If you would like all of your favorite Security Weekly content at your fingertips and hear from Sam and Andrea when we have upcoming webcast and technical trainings, or if you have a question for one of our illustrious hosts or someone on the Security Weekly team, or maybe you just want to hang out with the Security Weekly crew and community, you can subscribe to your favorite podcast catcher via your podcast catcher, sign up for our mailing list and our Discord server, and stay in the loop all things Security Weekly by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe. Speaking of technical trainings, on October 22nd, we'll provide a first look at the new free resource that delivers thousands of remedies as a service to bridge the gap between vulnerabilities found and vulnerabilities fixed. On October 28th, we learn how to build an integrated security platform in our webcast at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Visit securityweekly.com/webcast to register or /on demand for the previously recorded ones. Whitney Maxwell has over 5 years of experience in security. She received a DEF CON Black Badge in 2018 when she took first place in the Social Engineering Village competition, where she performed a Vishing call against a Fortune 500 company live in front of hundreds of spectators. She works for Rapid7, and you can visit Rapid7 by going to securityweekly.com/Rapid7 and find out all things that are happening at Rapid7. Whitney, welcome to the show.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to have you. You haven't been on one of our shows before, but we did a conference interview with you, I believe, at Layer 8.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. Outstanding.
And you have lots of fans in the Discord server today.
So you have to pop in our Discord server and say hi after the segment. I have a tough time reading it while I'm doing the show. So, Whitney, today we're going to talk about phishing and vishing. I want to, start. You had mentioned earlier that you were the judge for a collegiate social engineering CTF. I was wondering if you could tell us about that and some of the techniques that maybe impressed you by some of the students in that competition.
Yeah, I will try and limit it because we could just talk about the collegiate SCCTF. So essentially, we wanted to create a competition like the one that's at DEF CON, but for, kids who are in college. And, how do you do that? How do you, kind of create an environment that's not real, but still realistic? So what we ended up doing was we had 6 college teams, and it was international. We had a student from Norway who competed, and they had 3 different phases. They had an OSINT portion. They were each assigned a facility in their area that they researched, and we had a list of flags of things for them to look for, like employee badges or their dumpster company, or if they have security around the building. So they did OSINT, like looking through Google, anything that they could find, wrote up a report for OSINT. The next phase was crafting a phishing email based on their OSINT and with the goal of having a link that would be clicked on. They didn't have to own the domain. It was just kind of proof of concept.
Right. And these were real companies they were attacking, or?
Yes.
Okay.
But obviously, like, not really attacking, but
Yeah, like research. Yeah, attacking was the wrong word there.
exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah. And then the last part, which was a little tricky to figure out, was the vishing portion. We wanted to have the students actually go through and vish. But since we couldn't have them vish employees, we had them vish us, the judges. And so as judges, we had different kind of obstacles we would give them. Like, we maybe would challenge them or put them on hold, or, ask them a question about the company and see how they would adapt, and see how they could lead the person on the phone, like, to getting the answers that they wanted. And some were very clear, concise, like, got what they needed. Others had a little bit of a harder time kind of asking for what they wanted. But ultimately, like, it was amazing to watch. The girl from Norway who won, she, like, legit started crying. Like, we put her
some
on
like acting
hold,
skills.
and while she was on hold, like, we could hear, like, the sniffles, and we're like, something's happening. And then when she got back on the phone, it was like Academy Award
That's awesome.
appearance. Like, because there's fake crying. We all know fake crying. It was amazing. What the depth she tapped into.
Yeah, those of us
get
that
the
have
information
kids
she
know
needed.
fake crying really well.
Yeah, she committed to that role, and it worked very well for her. They had another one where they had done a lot of research on medical devices and devices that place had that were vulnerable. And so they were able to call and say, hey, we need to speak to the lab technician regarding this medical device that you have. If you look at the tag, and you can see it's vulnerable to these, 3 or 4 vulnerabilities. So we're going to talk you through, how we're going to get this patched and updated for you, because it's impacting, COVID samples or whatever it was. Like, it was very well crafted. They were very calm, but they were very well researched in everything that they said, that their pretext was very believable. So it was a delight. Yeah.
That's a good point right there for both attackers, if you're going to be a social engineer as part of your role as an attacker, right? Hopefully with permission, right? Not an actual attacker. But also on the defense too, that when you receive one of these calls, important to tell your users that it's going to sound legitimate if the person's done their research. Because I often think that when you're the victim of an attack, you don't consider how much research could go into that particular attack.
Exactly. And I've said that if I can have an entire day or two just devoted to doing research, I can get more done in a 3-minute phone call than spending hours, crafting a phishing email or trying to get into the network the other way. If I can get someone on the phone and I have enough information, usable information that makes me believable as an internal employee, I can get a lot of information that otherwise using other open source tools or resources would take a lot longer. Phishing calls can pack a lot of information if you know how to do them well.
Yeah. Are you impersonating a real person, or is it more like in the movie Hackers when he's like Mr. Kawasaki, right?
It depends. I know that can be kind of an aggravating answer to have, but it's good to have both angles, because if you're going after, say it's a business that's really small, everybody knows everybody,
right.
It's going to be a lot harder to impersonate someone who works there versus, someone coming from outside the company. If sometimes I'll lean in the middle, we're like, I'm part of your company, but I'm brand new. I just started. So maybe I haven't met you yet. And that kind of can maybe ease some, hey, I haven't heard your name before. So yeah, it's tricky to pick your pretext. A lot of it depends on the information you can find and what your goal is, but you can be successful with both. You just have to be very careful if you're trying to impersonate in-person company employees, that you are armed with questions that they could ask.
Yeah. And if you're referencing your BLT drive, probably not going to be successful in the real world. Matt, you had a question.
Yeah, what I think is interesting about Vishing is the skill set. It's a shift in skill set, right? As you think about most hackers, a lot of good technical skills to kind of maneuver through. This is a soft skill game, right? This is just having really good communication skills, playing the role to the T, doesn't necessarily, although it could, doesn't necessarily require a lot of technical skill to do a vishing attack, which I think is really interesting. It opens up who could vish you because they don't necessarily have to be that technical to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the coolest thing is that over a vishing call, you want to get technical information, and normally you're targeting people who are not, technically savvy, if it's a receptionist or a help desk person. And so you need to be technical enough to ask for what you want in language that they understand. So if you ask for, on your email client, do you have multi-factor authentication enabled? For them, that's not going to register. And so being able to rephrase things with, hey, when you check your email, do you normally go through Google or do you use Outlook? Is that the program you use to view your email? Okay, Outlook. So that's your email client. And then, for what was my second question? Like multi-factor authentication. So when you log in, do you have to type your password and supply a number or a code? Yes. Okay. Being able to actually rephrase a technical term into something that is very non-technical is, I think, one of the best ways to get what you want. Because then they trust you if you're able to explain the process to them. If you can walk a non-technical person through the process of finding their system information and then reading back their operating system information, including the patch number and the exact system, oh, I'm running Windows 10. Okay, well, read me Windows 10 dot, whatever. Being able to get them to that point takes someone who is technically savvy, but who has the soft skills to be able to walk someone who's non-technical through that process.
Whitney, how important is knowing some of the lingo that's specific to your target, right? Because there's technical jargon, there's the soft skills where you're going to converse with someone, but I feel like there's a third component where, that organization may have certain things in their culture, in their vernacular that are specific to them. As the social engineer, it's important to know some of that stuff, right, in your attack, or does that not matter as much?
Oh, I like to refer to that as the company camouflage.
Yeah.
Because, if you were to come in with Rapid7 specifically and say, hey, I need to get in contact with whoever is at the head of HR, well, we don't have human resources here. We have people strategy. And it's a kind of a red flag. They're very deliberate in why they've renamed that. And so if someone comes in looking for that, that something's off. So the more that you can look and talk and feel and throw around the same goals that the company is going through, charities or things that they're involved in,
right.
It's definitely going to kind of add that camouflage that no, really, I am one of you. I talk like you.
Need to know about the moose, right, Whitney?
Yeah, the one moose.
And
he might have a name. I'm not sure.
One of the other things that I thought, and I've heard other social engineers talk about this, right? But I think in the times of most people working from home now, with COVID, that having background noises and such, it kind of plays into more like a believable story, first of all, because we're all working from home. So it's conceivable that if you're calling someone else, you're also working from home. So how often do you use the background noises and distractions? That's not in every call, right? That's per situation kind of basis. I think you mentioned a crying baby. I've seen social engineers use the crying baby noises in the background to basically promote that sense of urgency, right?
Definitely. And a lot of times with those techniques, you are really trying to play on the person's empathy. and wanting to help you even more so than maybe when they first met you.
Right.
And COVID and with working from home has just created a brilliant empathy field with everybody knows what it's like to work from home and the chaos that can come with that. And so if I'm asking for something and I maybe don't have all the information, like maybe I don't know all of the questions to the security answers to the security questions, but I know one or maybe two, by introducing like some background chaos and a dog barking and a baby crying or a glass breaking, being flustered and having the other person listen to that as you're trying to, think of an answer that you filled out 3 years ago, you're hoping that like building up that kind of empathy is going to allow them to like, okay, I'll help you out through this one time. And that's all it needs. A lot of times you just need enough empathy for them to like, okay, I'll just go ahead and reset this for you, or I'll just go ahead and figure this out. Creating that empathy is even more realistic now since it's an environment most people are familiar with. So it's definitely a tactic that attackers can use.
Matt?
Yeah, so you've walked us through some good examples. So my question then is, how do you prevent some of this from happening? How do you teach people what to do to validate that phone call is valid, that the person on the other end of the line is who you think it is? What are some of the tips to actually help educate people to prevent these types of attacks?
Yeah. There are a lot of different ways. They're mostly like fairly simple ways. You don't have to overcomplicate it. The first is if you feel that someone is contacting you, which rarely happens if you don't recognize their voice, you don't recognize who they are, taking a moment that, they're calling you, clearly they're going to be requesting things of you. They're wanting your time. They're wanting it now. To be able to kind of take control of the conversation again by saying, you know what, let me put you on hold real quick. What was your name again? Putting them on hold, seeing if you can look them up in the company directory, looking to see if their phone number matches the phone number that they're calling from, which we'll get to in a minute. But just knowing what their real phone number should be, who they're claiming that they are, maybe contacting your manager of like, hey, I might need you to answer a question in a sec, might have a suspicious phone call. So putting them on hold, having the time to kind of look at the facts on your end just to see what's going on. And then if they start asking you questions, I would be very careful about giving any information away. Because to attackers, things that seem really super benign or not harmful at all are very valuable to an attacker. Recently, I was doing Vishing calls and I wasn't getting information about their operating systems or their VPN, but I was getting information that was helping to perfect my pretext because I was getting details. I was getting details about a company event, on where it was taking place, on who was in charge. I kind of knew some of these things, but they were filling in all of the gaps for me. And at the end of that conversation, I had a well-rounded pretext that I knew was accurate for this company. And so divulging, internal numbers, internal email addresses, policies for your Wi-Fi, like really anything that you think would be simple, just don't give it out. You don't need to. There are other places that they can find that.
There was a stand-up comedian. You reminded me of a stand-up comedian that received a phone call like by accident. It was a wrong number. And it was like the guy on the other end of the phone was like ranting of that his budget got cut. And I think even like he hung up and he called back. And when he called back, the comedian was like, so I just went with it. I'm like, yeah, can you believe the budget got cut? And was just very attentive to what was being said on the other line. and like basically got himself into like all these different conference calls with the company talking about the budget being cut, until he like finally let the cat out of the bag. But it's exactly what you're talking about. If you listen for those cues, you can glean information. Even if you're not getting the user's password, right, you can still get information that will lead you up to that point.
Yeah. And the small talk in between the one ask is a lot of times like where you get a lot of the juicy things, like, hey, while you're checking on my IT request, like, hey, are you excited about the weekend? Is it payday for you? Do you have like the holiday off? Are you going to go down to the cafeteria and grab something? Oh, I thought you guys had a cafeteria. I guess not. Like, these are all things that you can really easily integrate into everyday conversation, but it reveals information about the employee. And in terms of, the earlier question is, okay, how do we get past this? Because I'll tell you one thing, phishing is hard for attackers. I do it actually somewhat reluctantly because I know that I'm good at it. It is not my favorite thing. It is very stressful for me. I'm usually like breathing into a bag before every phone call and incredibly nervous because it's a whole different ball game. You can't let anything slip. Like being in type of a computer, like there are certain parts of my brain that I can shut down. But when you are talking with a person, all hands on deck, like every single part of my brain is alert, looking for any subtle, slight in tone, or constantly remembering like what my name is and what my goal is and who I work for. I mean, there's a lot to keep track of when you're lying and conning people, that it's a very difficult thing for attackers to do. However, it has good yield. It's very successful. So attackers go through the pain of doing it. But there are some hangups that we encounter when trying to phish people. One is usually we're spoofing the number that we're calling from. So what you see as the number coming from is not the number we're actually calling from. So we're spoofing our number. We're calling a specific number. And if you were to say to me, the attacker, you know what, I'm right in the middle of something, but I'll be able to call you back in an hour. I have your extension. I'll just call you back there. Like there's nothing I can do because I don't control that number. It's especially like hang up, like say, hey, you know what, I can't talk to you right now. I will call you back. And I will call you back at the number listed in the company directory. That is how I will get in contact with you. And if they try to give you some story of like, oh, well, that number's not working right now, and I'll need to give you a different number, it's like, okay, well, then I'll contact your manager and verify that this is something that you need. There's always someone that you can verify and call back. You can always deflect. You don't ever have to answer any information, just saying, I'm so sorry, can't provide that information. Is there anything else I can do to help? And then when in doubt, you can just hang up.
Right.
Because attackers, I have such respect for them. They're some of the smartest, coolest people I know. But by and large, we kind of like to go the path of least resistance when we need to get somewhere. And so if you're being a bit of a difficult target, you hang up, they'll move on to somebody else that they'll think is easier. It's doubtful that like they'll just keep coming back to you over and over and over if you're not being receptive. So if you're feeling uncomfortable, feeling like you just don't have a good feeling about it, you can always hang up and let your manager know, hey, I got this super weird phone call, and this is the number that they were claiming to come from. Looks like they're posing and they're asking for these things. It'd be good to make all the employees aware that, phone calls are happening. But those are some pretty easy things. I've been yelled at and screamed at as like a legitimate person, like doing phishing calls. And there are a couple of times where I'm like my feelings are hurt. Like you don't have to be like really mean to people who are attacking you. Like I get it. We're the bad guy, but We do have feelings.
I mean, it could be a legitimate call too, and I think where those kind of roads intersect is with deliveries, right? Because now, especially with people working from home, you're expecting a lot of deliveries, right? So you need a really good pretext to know that someone might be expecting a delivery, right? And that's probably a pretty good kind of tactic. Because if you feel like many of us, wait, I don't want to miss my delivery, right? Because I could be getting something good, right?
Yep. This time of year is a great time of year to do phishing and vishing because you've got usually like quarterly bonuses are going to be coming out around this time. We've got holidays. And especially with COVID, that always adds a layer of, hey, this is our company's policy related to Halloween. This is our company's policy, with approaching Thanksgiving. But then you have Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you have benefits, which are usually opted in to around like the November timeframe. There's a lot going on, like with holidays of like opting in and helping charities and foundations and organizations. And, there's a lot of little pieces that tend to kind of come back around again and again this time of year that it's very easy to slip in an attack that looks legitimate among, other things that are going on, not to mention like the election that is going on that, hey, we want to, enable you to go vote. And if you want to check that you're registered, like here's a link. You can type in your name and social security number and it'll tell you if you're registered to vote and like the status of your vote. You can, any situation that's going on right now, you can pretty much find a way to phish or vish or use it as a very legitimate pathway in, especially for companies, like at a company level, but it still applies to, a personal level as well.
You think we should have a heightened awareness of vishing? I feel like as an industry and attackers as a whole are kind of migrating towards that because it is a lot harder than it used to be to pull off a real legitimate phishing attack. There's just a lot of stuff. I mean, I talk to, my friends that do that on a regular basis, and there's a lot of hoops just to get a domain that can like be delivered email is a challenge today to have it look legitimate. So do you think attackers are moving more towards vishing and therefore we should have a heightened awareness in our organizations?
I think there's still an effort that goes into phishing emails. It is much more of an effort than it used to be. As you said, like email clients, email filters, the services themselves, like O365, are catching and quarantining emails at a very quick rate. And so being able to get to craft and develop an email that has everything you need in it, that will go through and land in an inbox, it's actually quite difficult. It takes a lot of work to get that done. It's still being done because it's still, a great avenue. The problem with phishing at the moment is that with COVID being work from home, even if I am able to discover work numbers for a particular client, that doesn't mean that those work numbers are being in use because nobody's in the office. And so then you're calling people at home and it's a little bit more of a complicated setup than like vishing when people are in the office. Vishing, I think, is a little bit, it takes a lot more prep in terms of doing background information as a whole instead of just specific to vishing. You really kind of need to know the lay of the land of the company, know what's kind of going around, what information you're trying to gather, and then developing pretext of why you're calling and needing that information and who you can talk to and we'll give you that information back without, raising suspicion. It's definitely like the high up, the higher level game. There's a lot more at stake because you can burn something very quickly by revealing yourself, over a phone call versus like an email that maybe looks a little shady. Phishing calls can go south rather quickly. So, it definitely takes a lot more brain power, which I love. Like, it's very cool. I'm super exhausted after,
Right.
because they take everything. But it's also a good way to help people understand that they can still be friendly, they can still be helpful, they can still do their jobs, without having attackers take advantage of them to giving the extra that they didn't need to give.
And when you do this as a service for Rapid7, right? And then when we talk about defenses, simulating this attack and hiring folks like yourself to come do this for the company is also a great way to raise awareness, because I think that the best user that is most aware of an attack that they may succumb to is a user that has been the victim of that, and hopefully a simulated attack from a company that is not actually after their information, right?
Yeah. So I work with services and consulting, and in terms of like the social engineering aspect, there are 3 tiers. There's the phishing emails, which can just be more like clicking on a link, trying to capture credentials. It can be more in depth of actually trying to have an employee execute a payload on their workstations. It takes a lot more effort to get that source worked out. But then there's, vishing calls with a specific goal of, hey, we want to see how many people will give up information about their workstations, or if they're willing to divulge their passwords, trying to suss out like where they are in vishing, like what's suspicious to them, and maybe if we can improve that level. And then physical engineering and actually breaking into buildings, getting into areas we're not supposed to have access to, which kind of uses a little bit of all 3, where you're vishing, you're social engineering, you're still researching, you need to have the technical aspect in order to know how to lockpick or get into the server rooms. So it's a big conglomerate of everything without getting caught by security. So but we do all of that.
Outstanding. And folks that want to learn more can visit securityweekly.com/Rapid7. Whitney, thank you so much for appearing on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Coming up next is some pre-recorded segments from our Security Weekly Virtual Hacker Summer Camp. Stay tuned for those.